Welcome to the future of payroll and workforce management insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I am Executive Community Leader of Future of Payroll, and I do a few other things. But enough about me. My guest today is Michael Nierstedt from Multiplier. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Excited to always talk about payroll, workforce, all that fun stuff. So let's get started and get into it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just for the folks out there in the wild who are viewing this podcast, Multiplier is an employer of record. There are several out there, and we'll learn a little bit more about EORs for short, the acronym, little bit more. Learn a little bit more about those today as well. But I like to start off the podcast with every one of my guests, just asking them, because everyone seems to have a passion in the world of work. It seems to be more of a thing than maybe in some other professions or industries. Michael, what's your passion in the world of work? What gets you going every day? What's your mission?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in the payroll and HR space for 16 years now almost, and what's always driven me is as someone who started as an hourly employee and worked at those kind of minimum wagey jobs, I really have a deep passion for making sure people get treated appropriately from a labor standpoint. And that could mean payroll, which is what I've mostly worked in, but that could also mean benefits administration, time and attendance, all the way down to how you recruit and hire people. I've worked in kind of all the different spaces of the HR stack, and it's just really interesting to see how companies try to solve these problems, as well as kind of the software and service providers that accompany the space. And so I feel very lucky that I've gotten to spend pretty much my entire professional career in this space and work on something that, I don't feel icky about at the end of the week, So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I like that too about the HCM space, not feeling icky at the end of the week. It's actually a real bonus. Um, You mentioned wage and hourly employees, and there's so much compliance around that, and there's so many ways to just mess up by accident, even as an organization, and really ruin their day without meaning to. And so there's so much to think about there. But let's talk about global hiring, because there's a lot of challenges in that. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, get off on the wrong foot with new employees and this kind of stuff, or even just figuring out how to hire new employees. And this kind of parlays with what an EOR, employer of record, is. Maybe you could share with our audience a few of your thoughts around all of that.
Yeah, so it's been really exciting to be at the company I'm at now, Multiplier, for the last year, working in the employer of record and global payroll spaces, because the truth is that a lot of the developed world is their workforce is aging and shrinking. And so talent is becoming a commodity much more than it ever has been. And I think businesses have just historically always had the leverage, and they're really struggling with that, to be honest, that loss of leverage. But one thing that can be done to help them meet the revenue goals and the growth goals that they have is seeking outward to global hiring. There's a lot of countries out there with a lot of talent, um, that companies can take advantage of through things like EOR and global payroll. And depending on, the size of the investment you want to make, both are viable options, right? If you're looking at, you know, kind of dipping your toe and quickly embracing a new market for labor purposes, I think that EOR is such a great option to kind of ensure that you're providing competitive benefits and pay in those regions through an employer of record, but also allow you to not like have to spend months and months trying to set up your organization to kind of create an entity there and legally be truly placed in those countries. And then global payroll is that thing that I feel like most of the time companies graduate to when they enter a country, when they have that more permanent presence and they've demonstrated value in that market. um, that's when they can start really looking at, okay, I have enough scale now to build my own entity and run this in house. And also have some additional benefits truly with allowing yourself to have a unified HR experience for all your workers. And so I think that what we tend to see in the global hiring space is that clients need to have a very nuanced approach depending on how mature they are in the market that they're talking about, right? And so you often will see with our clients and probably with competitors of ours as well, that it's really a portfolio where they may be doing global payroll in some countries and maybe doing EOR in some other countries, and then maybe in some other situations are even utilizing contractors and stuff like that if they have very temporary work needs.
Yeah, that's all really interesting stuff. Maybe, and and we talk a lot about EORs here at HR.com. We actually have an EOR alliance, um, where we're talking about a lot of things just of interest to the EOR industry. Um, Help me understand a little bit more, there, or the audience here. There's there's sort of a more of a permanency implied. I don't want to use that term necessarily from a, from a technical standpoint, but from a contextual, a feeling standpoint, there's a more of a permanency when it comes to global payroll, getting a real global payroll scenario set up for yourself in a region that might not be your native region as an organization. Whereas there's more of an immediacy, and possibly a more of a temporary scenario when you just need to kind of get up and running and hire people in a compliant way in a new region. Can you kind of um, can you just dive into that just a little bit more to help the audience kind of understand the difference there?
Yeah. So again, with employer of record, really what you're doing is instead of um, yourselves employing this person, you're really hiring a firm like ourselves as Multiplier, or one of our competitors, globalization partners, let's say. You're hiring them to be the employer of record, so they're going to be the ones that administrate the benefits, pay the worker, ensure all legal contracts are compliant and signed, and really control, like, I think, the compliance part of that relationship, and then you're responsible for funding it. So that's like the EOR piece. With global payroll, you're really running an entity in that country, and they're true employees of your organization. Um, and there's pros and cons to both. There really is. So obviously, speed is exponentially higher. Risk is way less actually with EOR. So if you're joining or wanting to enter a new country, it really is the best way to do it. Unless you're like acquiring a very large firm, you should pretty much always start with EOR. Or if you're like, and I don't even know always in all cases, but like if you're like starting a 300 person manufacturing plant, then maybe EOR is not the right way to go because EOR is more expensive, right? It just is. And so at a certain scale, the costs of creating the entity and all of the burden there starts to get offset once we usually see, it depends, but anywhere from 20 to 50 employees, you really start to see the benefit maybe leaning towards global payroll. Um, the other benefit to global payroll is that you can truly incorporate them into your organization.
Mhm.
Now, in my opinion, does that usually happen? I don't believe it does. Most companies don't have a single HRIS. Most companies don't have like unified experiences, and a lot of workers end up being second class citizens anyways. But it is an opportunity that's out there naturally with global payroll. And with something like Multiplier, we actually are pretty platform agnostic. So if you want to have your pay stubs and payroll outputs kind of sent into a central HRIS, we do that for clients today.
Mhm.
And I think that's something you should expect if that's one of your goals, like to create that unified experience. So I really view that they each have their benefits. It just really depends on the maturity of your footprint in that location.
Mm,
Um, the only other thing I would throw in is, do you have permanence in that location? So there are rare cases where it may be like, okay, well, we're going to be in this country for 2 years and then exit.
mm.
Even if it's like 50 people or even maybe even 100 people, it may not be worth the legal burden to take all that in house and then shutter it. So we do see that at times, but that's a pretty rare edge case. Otherwise, it really just comes down to maturity and how big your footprint is in those countries that really determine what's best for you.
Yeah, that's interesting. The speed, there's an agility that's facilitated by going the EOR route, right? If you have an immediate or a need to get into a new region and you don't want to, it just you don't have the in-house expertise even necessarily to understand how to employ somebody legally in
Totally.
that region,
Like
and so you want. Hmm.
what I would say is our implementation times as an industry, as the EOR industry, are so fast that we can get you, because we have an employer already in those countries, right? We're in 150 countries. We're going to be faster than your hiring process.
Yes.
So that's how fast it is. That's how fast EOR is. So it really is something that, like, if you're starting to have hiring challenges in your HQ country, you really should start thinking about what are the opportunities out there that may be able to be addressed. Remote work is becoming more pervasive. I think uh, having people work in different regions is not as uncomfortable or as abnormal as it once was. And so obviously there's a lot of transitions to make there, but there's a lot of companies that have successfully done it. And I think that you have a lot of resources to go to try to like figure out how to incorporate those types of workers into kind of like your workflows as a company and make them feel included.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought up the remote work too, because uh, to to it's just one scenario where you want to go into a new region and quickly you need to pivot quickly and you want to go with an EOR and you want to go with an EOR that is able to implement very quick as especially quickly, right? um, which is which is really important, but sometimes you have other trends like work from anywhere or digital nomads, right, folks? And you might want to have a way to enable your workforce, especially if you're a larger organization, to have your workforce able to go to I don't know, maybe someone has family out in, let's create a crazy scenario. They're based in New York City. This isn't actually so crazy, but you're in New York City and you have family out in Finland and something's come
Yeah.
up with a family and you have the kind of job where you can be very productive remotely, and but there's something about the family situation you need to be there in person. Maybe it's an aging a parent or something like that, right? And so work from anywhere is something else that can be facilitated by an EOR or a similar type of or some other type of approach, and you're affecting you're impacting your ROI in positive ways because you're retaining that employee. That employee might have had to leave the organization without this option, right? And maybe it's a high performing employee, so that's the last thing you want, right? You're also prolonging employment that way as well. And it's also, let's say that sometimes it can just be sort of some of these more conventional recruiting metrics even, right? If time to fill is shortened because you have this other entity. You don't have to kind of like marshal your own recruiting team to kind of get over there and
Yeah.
or to figure out how to hire people from your central recruiting team. You can sort of you can leave that to the other entity that's doing it for you. So there's all sorts of operational efficiencies and long-term ROI benefits as well.
Yeah, we've definitely seen some cases of that. Um, it obviously has some administrative challenges, but they're all very solvable. And the thing that's nice about EOR is the EOR is going to have it in their best interest to make sure that that person that goes to Finland is compliant in Finland via their employer. So you really do get like a nice backstop in the case that you mentioned about, oh, I don't understand this market at all. How am I supposed to support it? Well, you can just do it through EOR. And the truth is with EOR, for the most part, it's mostly used for more leveraged employment because of the costs involved. So I mean, I think if you're already entertaining these types of services, I think that um, you're probably very interested in making sure that you keep these types of people around and that you have them in your workforce. So I think it's definitely a viable thing that I have seen happen.
Right.
And it just makes you a lot more flexible too, in terms of making sure that there's less chaos. And then also the other thing too is that you avoid compliance issues because a lot of times I heard a story once, I won't say the company, but I actually heard of an executive actually being thrown in a jail because they were in Nigeria for too long
Wow.
working. And the reason they did it was because they were negotiating an oil contract. And so they did it as leverage and they ended up like completely losing like they ended up having to pay a way higher percentage to the government because they had this leverage on them. So like it can, I mean, obviously I don't think many people will run into that problem, but it just shows that like, you know, it can be one of these things where you just go, oh, well, we'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it later. Then all of a sudden it's been 6 months and you have like a major compliance issue where you've been illegally employing this person in a different country and they haven't been paying taxes or anything.
Yeah, yeah, it's and by the way, a major compliance issue, it doesn't have to be, your CEO being thrown into jail. It can be that other example you just shared, right? And so to share that sort of caricature or extreme example, it kind of drives the point home. It absolutely does. It's interesting also just the way that I was actually trying to think if I had seen a documentary about that particular CEO. I don't know if there was a documentary about
I
it.
don't know if it was a CEO, but it was definitely like a director, senior
Okay.
director person. And and yeah, they were there for running a factory and it was temporary, but it was long enough where they established residence, and the government had a piqued interest in understanding what was going on because they were on like I can't remember if it was a 10 or 20-year contract on oil rights, and so it was just perfect timing to jail the person. Uh, so, anyways,
That's,
it's kind of a
that's,
crazy story. Like
there are some
I don't
crazy
expect
stories.
you guys to run into that out there, but like it can get very strange sometimes. And at the very least, like I've definitely heard a lot of stories where, and this is at Fortune 250, Fortune 100 companies, even where they go, "Oh yeah, I was told that this person moved to Ireland 8 months ago, and I was just told this week," you know, and those can create major issues for companies. So, um, even with maybe the fact that a lot of countries aren't enforcing labor laws maybe as strongly as they have in the past, it's still if it's egregious enough, it does get caught. And we see major labor lawsuits happening against not just employers, but even service providers today for those types of violations.
Yeah, yeah, it can be. This is a deep rabbit hole. Might warrant another episode of the podcast. I'm going to throw a little bit of curveball because we didn't talk about it in the green room, but it's something you've heard about a lot. It's AI. We can't get through an episode of a podcast in HCM without talking about AI. But I failed to mention to our audience. I think that you're director of product over at Multiplier. Um, and what is your view on AI in this space, whether it be global payroll or EOR, and what are some interesting things that you're seeing happening product wise in this industry?
Yeah, this is probably just my opinion a little bit. I think that there is a lot of promise, but there is a lot of hype too. I what I would say is a lot of the benefits of AI that we're seeing so far is actually around speed of development and making sure that less issues go into production. That's definitely one big piece, but those aren't like the big wow things that are out there. I would say, you know, yeah, there's things around implementation and OCR, what like optical reading of files and stuff for implementation purposes. And there's learning management optimizations that you can do. But really, the one that I think has the biggest, or the two areas that I think have the biggest opportunity, one is compensation benchmarking. So obviously, you need a very large data set to do compensation benchmarking well. Um, but I don't think anyone's really solved that problem yet. I don't think anyone actually knows what they should pay an employee. And we end up paying consulting firms like Radford and all these other guys like a lot of money to basically give our compensation data to them so that they can sell it to other people. And it's like a feedback loop. It's a very weird business model, but and it still doesn't give like a complete picture of what's going on. I think that if you had a big enough data source like ADP has, or like a Workday or a UKG, you actually are paying enough people in certain regions to actually say pretty much to the penny what someone should get paid.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity to make sure people get paid correctly instead of it being a subjective thing that people often get wrong. And so that's, I think, a big opportunity area that I haven't really seen get fully thought through yet. I think the second one is really around hiring. So we have lots of hiring tools, but what frustrates me is they're all about making it easier for the hiring manager to do their job. And personally, I've asked this question a lot to hiring managers. I go, "What's your number one challenge?" And they go, "I can't find good people." And I go, "Well, how does you looking through applications faster help you find good people? Aren't you just letting more people get excluded then?" And they don't really know how to answer that. And I think that there's something that I think the reason why AI has been focused on hiring manager optimization is because that's who the companies are talking to. And also it's easier to build. But
Right.
we really need to focus more on how do we find good talent and how do we think outside the box to find that talent, and maybe recommend someone that doesn't check all the qualification boxes. Maybe like how do we include more people instead of exclude more people from the review process? And because the bottom line is requisition times, at least in the US, have continually gone up every year I've been in the business. So like I don't think whatever these tools are doing is working. And so I think that there's a big opportunity there as well. And I hope to see some innovation there because I think a lot of companies are struggling with that right now.
I, I totally agree with you on that one. Thank you so much, Michael, for being a guest on the podcast. We hope to have you back.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.